Hello, let me try to explain you what I learned from Bill Keith about the circle of fifths. That was about 35 years ago now. I'm using here a scan of Bill's personal circle of fifths. First, let's construct this circle of fifths. For this we will take the major scale. Let's start with the C major scale. Those are all the white keys on the piano. Notice we have 7 notes, C, D, F, G, A, B, C, and then back to C. The 5th note in the scale is the G. Let's now have a look at the G scale. In the G scale, the 5th note is the D. Next we'll take the D scale. The 5th note this time is an A. You can also notice that in the G scale we have 1 sharp, the F sharp. In the D scale we have 2 sharps. In the C scale we had no sharps at all. So next will be the A scale. Its 5th is an E, and here we have 3 sharps in the scale. Next we have the E scale, which has a B as its 5th, and now we have 4 sharps. So we have 1 extra sharp for every new scale. We can go on like this and end up with the C scale again. Now if we take the scales that we found in this order and put them in a circle, starting by C and then G, D, etc., we'll end up with what they call the circle of fifths. Notice that the C scale, although not in the right order, is completely on one side of this circle, leaving the sharps and flats on the other side of the circle. Looking at the notes of the C scale, we can notice that the C itself is laying in 2nd position. Now imagine we replace F by an F sharp, then we'll get another scale. It's the G scale, and G is in 2nd position of this shape. Next, we could replace C by a D flat or C sharp, and we'll have another scale. It will be the D scale, and D will be in 2nd position. So we can conclude that all notes of a major scale are at one side of the circle with the root name in 2nd position. Another interesting thing to notice is what we call the 1-4-5 chords. Most bluegrass songs and all of the blues songs have these 3 chords. Notice these 3 chords are laying next to each other in any key. In the key of C we'll have C, F and G. In the key of A we'll have A, D and E, and so on. Let's now look at some chords. A G major chord is made up of a G, a B and a D. Since we start to notice that everything looks a bit symmetrical in the circle, we could move this shape to another position and have another major chord. By moving the 3 arrows 1 arrow to the left, we get C, E and G, which is the C major chord. Another arrow to the left gives us the F major chord, and so on. Another very interesting chord is the diminished chord. As you can see, the 4 notes of the diminished chord form a square. A C diminished chord, for example, has C, A, G flat and E flat. If we turn this shape 1 hour to the right, we'll have the G diminished chord with C, E, D flat and D flat. 1 more hour to the right, we'll have the D diminished chord with D, B, A flat and F. Next, we'll have the A diminished chord. And notice this is exactly the same chord as the C diminished chord. In fact, there are only 3 diminished chords with 4 different names. A C diminished chord, or an A diminished chord, or an G flat diminished, or an E flat diminished are all the same chord. Another interesting chord is the augmented chord. There we only have 3 notes, C, E and A flat. Moving everything 1 hour to the right, we'll have the G augmented chord. 1 hour to the right, we'll have the D augmented chord. And one more hour to the right, we have the A augmented chord. And next, we're back to the C augmented chord, which is also the E augmented chord or the A flat augmented chord. There are only 4 augmented chords in total. Another interesting topic is the tritone. The tritone is an interval of 2 notes that are completely opposed on the circle. For example, C and F sharp. If you see the circle as a clock, these 2 notes are 6 hours apart. 6 hours from C to F sharp, and also 6 hours from F sharp to C. Also on the fingerboard of your instrument, these 2 notes are as far apart as possible. It takes 6 semitones from C to F sharp. And it takes 6 semitones from F sharp to C. Six semitones equal 3 whole tones. That's what gave the name tritone. When you play a tritone, you can hear a certain tension. That's the tension you will hear in the 7th chord. The tritone is an essential part of every 7th chord. In a D 7th chord, the C and F sharp notes are responsible for that tension. This tension of the D 7th chord will be resolved by having it followed by a G major chord. What really resolves this tension is the F sharp note, moving up a semitone to G, and the C note moving down a semitone to B. Since the circle is perfectly symmetrical, we can also resolve this tension by moving up a semitone from C to C sharp and moving down a semitone from F sharp to F. This second resolution sounds a little bit strange at first, but if you repeat it a few times, it will sound as natural as the first resolution. The ear and brain adjust very quickly. It is now even the first resolution that will sound strange when played again for the first time. The second resolution is what will happen when moving from an A flat 7 chord to a D flat chord. The D7th and the A flat 7th chord share this same tritone, made of C and F sharp. We can also resolve the tension of the A flat 7 chord, as we did with the D7 chord, by raising the F sharp to a G and lowering the C to a B. In fact, A flat 7 and D7 are what they call substitutes. We can replace D7th by an A flat 7 or vice versa, since they have the same tritone. So if A flat 7th is a substitute for D, then E flat 7 is a substitute for A, and so on. All chords laying opposite in the circle are each other's substitutes. Let's have a look now at chord progressions. We already talked about the 1-4-5 progression. In a lot of songs and instrumentals, we'll have chords progressing around the circle counterclockwise. For example, Salty Dog Blues, starting in a G, then going to E, A, D, and back to G. In the case of Salty Dog Blues, E, A, and D are 7th chords, but you can also find tunes where you have minor chords in those progressions. A typical example would be G, E minor, A minor, D 7th, back to G. One of Bill's favorite tunes, Caravan, has this nice progression around the circle in its second part, starting at C, going to F, B flat, E flat, and then instead of A flat, it crosses the circle to its substitute, to D, and finally ends up in G. And probably the most interesting tune going around the circle is called Bluesette, which was written by Belgian jazz legend Toots Thielemans. This tune was originally written in B flat, but here I'm explaining it in G. The tune starts with a G major 7 chord. Next you could expect some C chord, but instead that is substituted by a F sharp minor 7 flat 5. From then the chords evolve almost all around the circle until an A flat. If you consider the opening G chord as a substitute for a D flat, the circle is even complete. Listen to my attempt to play through the chord structure twice and see how the chords evolve around the circle. The full names of the chords are appearing on the bottom right of your screen.